Hi everyone, it's Gary here, and very warm welcome back to the fourth official for our post-match coverage of Rangers 1-0 draw in Athens with Panathinaikos. Joining me on this show once again is a friend of the fourth official from the brilliant Hellas Football podcast. Once again, it's Nick Samburarius. I think I've just about got away with that one, Nick, but no, I appreciate you coming on at this ridiculously early hour as it is over in Australia, to come on and speak about tonight's match in Athens.
No dramas. Good to be back on. If only the result was a little different from our end, that's all. But that's football. That's football. We've had other times in the past where this time last year we played Lons from France to Conference League playoff. They battered us across two legs. We somehow fluked it getting through, and it's basically karma. If you fast forward a year
Yeah,
these two legs.
yeah. Knockout football at this stage of any season is always a lot more about the result and certainly the end result, slightly more than performances. But anyone that sat and watched the video that myself and Nick did once the draw was made, that pitted Rangers up against Panathinaikos, will knew that we certainly in the build up to the game saw it as a bit of a 50-50 between both sides. And I think anyone that watched the 90 minutes at Ibrox last Wednesday evening will have seen a very similar match that transpired tonight over in Athens. And ultimately, it was Rangers super sub Djeidi Gassama who once again was the difference between the two sides with a goal that sealed Rangers' progress into the next knockout round of the playoffs to go into the Champions League, and Panathinaikos dropped down to the playoffs for the Europa League, and we'll touch on that in a little while, Nick. No changes for Rangers in terms of the starting 11 that started at Ibrox last weekend, which meant that once again, Kieran Dowell and Finlay Curtis were involved from the start, supporting Danilo up top. It meant they lined up with Jack Butland in goal, a back four of captain James Tavernier, Nasser Giga alongside John Suter at the heart of the defence, and Max Aarons continuing at left back, out of position. In midfield, Nico Rashkin and Mo Diamande providing support to Joe Rothwell, and as I say, Finlay Curtis and Kieran Dowell on the wings to support lone striker Danilo. And the one change for Panathinaikos, and the real kind of danger man and one of Panathinaikos' key men, certainly Vagiridis, who was suspended from his red card at Ibrox last weekend. He dropped out with Kutsarias coming in from Panathinaikos. But out with that, very much similar lineup for them with all the big names such as Pelestri, Ioannidis, Maximovic, all playing in that one. And what we saw, Nick, was very similar pattern of play. And I think anyone from a Rangers perspective would have expected Panathinaikos to come out the traps pretty quickly, given the fact they had that 2-goal deficit from last weekend. And it was no surprise to see them dominate the early stages this evening.
Absolutely. So we had to come out firing, which we did. Obviously, an early goal would have helped, but I was saying in the build up to the game, you don't have to score in the first 10, 20, or even in the first half. Give me a goal on the hour mark or with 20 to go, then you've got 20, 30 minutes of chaos. We got our way, then it only lasted for a couple of minutes, unfortunately. No, look, very pleased with our start. Again, on the front foot. I'm really loving what Victoria has implemented this season. How now he's had a full preseason, his first full preseason now, and he's evolving with his style. The high press is great to see, high energy. We got on the front foot. We dominated the game well. We've got to carry that moving forward. It's a great positive, but the same issues are hurting us from last season and in preseason. The lack of goals and the finishing that reared its ugly head again today. And I just look at the two big chances Balistri had in the first half, and I shake my head, especially the first one. Oh, if that was honest, if that was Tete's he's not been at it by all reports from preseason. He's struggling to come to grips with the higher intensity. But this time last year in Europe, that they would have half a chance and it'd be a goal. And that's exactly what we're lacking now.
Yeah,
We even from the first half, we got on the front foot. We had chances, we just couldn't finish.
yeah, and that was very similar to obviously what happened at Ibrox last week as well, Nick. Anyone that listened to the Fourth Official's post-match coverage of the game last week will have seen, obviously, Panathinaikos could very easily have gone 2 or 3-0 up in that first half in Glasgow last weekend, and that would have been a very different story to obviously when the goals came in the second half. And as you mentioned, the fact that early goal didn't come tonight, despite the opportunities, you could tell even just watching the game on TV tonight that the crowd, and it was big numbers in the Olympic Stadium in Athens tonight, for a Panathinaikos perspective. Obviously, in the region of around 40 to 45,000 that were there, and it created a big atmosphere. A few travelling bears in attendance there as well, but they were up for it in early doors, and I think if an early goal had came for Pana tonight, it would have really kind of set the traps going. But as the game started to drift towards half time, you could just sense the frustration starting to grow inside the Olympic Stadium tonight as opportunity after opportunity went begging. And when you look at some of those chances you mentioned, that the couple that Palestri had, there was a great save that Jack Butland made from Fotis Giannidis, who certainly is the kind of star man up top for Panathinaikos, and his header did really well off the back of, I think, 3 or 4 really dangerous looking crosses that came in from the wide areas tonight. And I think it was an area that Panathinaikos certainly looked to try and exploit tonight, particularly on Rangers' left-hand side and behind Max Aarons, who once again looked a little bit shaky alongside John Souttar at the back. And had it been for some slightly better final product, whether it's from that cross or whether it's from that finish, that could have been a lot more dangerous. But obviously, Butland does very well to keep that header from Giannidis out.
Yeah, no, across the two games, actually, Butland did quite well. And you got it spot on with us trying to go down your left, say our right. That's ultimately how our one goal came across the two legs, crossed by Bakasetas and Zurisic with the header. That was it. As for Ioannidis, he was another one from last season that 2 seasons ago, absolutely outstanding, terrific. Last season, a drop off with his finishing, and again we're seeing it in this one. Although the chances he had, they weren't as big as clear cut as Pellistri's, I would say. No, it was the header especially. It's a tight angle. Would have taken something special to, I think, to beat Butland from there.
Yeah, it was good movement for him though to get ahead of John
Oh
Souttar,
yeah,
to get the header in. But Butland obviously got his angle as well to make that save. But you saw that, and I think it was one thing that certainly Russell Martin will need to look at from a Rangers perspective is how that left-hand side of the defence operate, because that's now 2 games in a row where Max Aarons has looked very much a square peg in a round hole, playing it at left back rather than his natural kind of right back position. We saw later in the game when Djeidi Vidal came on, Rangers went to 5 at the back to try and see the game out, and Max Aarons going back over to his more natural right back, and almost immediately looked a lot more comfortable in that place. And I think certainly there's a lot of rumours around the future of Rıdvan Yılmaz, who may well be returning back to Turkey. You look at Yefti, who hasn't started either of the 2 games against Panathinaikos, and certainly I think Rangers will be in the market for certainly a left back, if not also a left-sided defender, because there was a couple of occasions where John Souttar, who can be a very good siege mentality defender and does well in terms of heading and putting blocks on the way, but he got caught on the ball an awful lot tonight and last week, and Pana didn't quite take advantage of the couple of opportunities that came from mistakes made from John Souttar this evening.
yeah, no, exactly. It's frustrating. The chances, the inability to put them away. Yeah. But also what you said earlier, I was going to talk about. The crowd was outstanding. The 45,000 that we did get, very rare for this time of the year. I should have mentioned that earlier. Late July when the Athenians are on the islands and people are in summer mode still, holidays and that. Very, very pleased with the crowd. Just, yeah, they deserve better. They deserve better.
Yeah, so I think looking at those opportunities, one of the things that really struck me about Rangers' performance, particularly in that first half, was their inability to keep hold of the football. Really struggled for an out ball, and as well as young Finlay Curtis did last week in the game at Ibrox with a really good goal. He did very well at the weekend as well, and a friendly against Middlesbrough. But the game really passed him by tonight, and that will be a steep learning curve for young Finlay in terms of his performance tonight. Kieran Dowell again on the right hand side. A lot of Rangers fans not the biggest fan of Kieran Dowell. I think we all wanted to see Djeidi Gassama in from the start tonight. That didn't happen, and Rangers just weren't able to get out at all in that first half. Danilo looked very isolated at the top end of the park, and the way Rangers had lined up, particularly in the midfield last week at Ibrox, Joe Rothwell felt did very well in terms of dictating play and getting his foot on the ball, but he looked very isolated at times. There was a bit of a kind of 2-on-1 throughout a lot of that first half, the likes of Nico Rashkin and Mo Diamandi not really being close enough to Joe Rothwell and giving Rangers opportunity to just calm the game down a little bit. All too often, the ball just came back at them, and ultimately that pressure would tell early in the second half when that goal came from Panathinaikos. But frustrating performance from Rangers that they weren't able to show that the kind of confidence on the ball and the kind of high energy that Russell Martin clearly wanted the team to play with tonight, and stated that in his pre-match comments that he wanted Rangers to be brave on the ball. They weren't on the ball, let alone to be brave on the ball in that first half.
That's you hit the nail on the head there with what you mentioned. It's exactly what Martin wants for Rangers, not only to have possession but to be attacking on the front foot and being brave. You got to get the ball first. So look, I guess credit to us with our press and our performance, but the good teams, especially this time of year, find a way to win. And I remember last when I was last on with you. I was if I was saying if we're going to progress, we have to lean on our stability, our smoother preseason that were a bit more advanced in our preparations. Where Rangers had the edge was the know-how, the European pedigree, the big game experience. That's what showed ultimately with finishing chances, weathering the storm, especially tonight, the second leg, weathering the storm in the first half, those early chances, and then one chance, one goal to make a 1-1. But yeah, look, personally, I'm going to be keeping an eye on Rangers moving forward because Martin, he demands the possession game. Didn't really see much of it in 3 out of the 4 halves. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on moving forward, even the next game now that you've got Victoria present.
Yeah, giving up possession and those kind of dangerous opportunities. When you look at the stats for the two games tonight, Nick, over the two legs, 34 shots were rained on Rangers' goal. And ultimately, the fact that Panathinaikos only scored one goal in two games from those 34 shots really sum up the kind of profligate nature of their finishing. And I think it's fair to say that against a side that take their chances more, then it would have certainly been a very different result for Rangers and Russell Martin. And as you mentioned, they did kind of ride their luck at times. Times there was some good defending, some last-ditch defending, but that luck did run out in the 54th minute, and that goal came from Juricic. I think when you look at it, I think from a Rangers perspective, really poor defensively. Nasser Giga too slow to come out for the offside. Once again, the ball going to the back post. Juricic getting in behind Kieran Dowell, who was caught under the ball a little bit, and behind Max Aaron's side as well. And listen, the ball ended up in the back of the net, but not the cleanest of connections on the header from Juricic. And then what seemed to be a very lengthy VAR check seemed to last about 3 or 4 minutes. Anyone that saw the first replay would have saw that it looked very, very tight in terms of it. So why it took them 4 minutes to decide, I think my first view, I could see that Giga was too slow in getting out. You could see that it was likely going to get given, but it seemed to take an absolute age to be confirmed by the VAR and for the goal to be given. But in that point, you saw the crowd starting to get up. But as so often happens in football, teams are at their most vulnerable when they just score a goal. And from a Rangers perspective, certainly Pana weren't able to build up a crest of momentum because Rangers didn't get that equaliser. But how did you feel when the goal came in from Juricic?
Oh, ecstatic, euphoric. That's personally, that's what I wanted. Give me that 20, 30 minutes of chaos. And I was saying, give me that, and I back us to get another goal if it pans out that way. But I did also say, don't concede. For any chance of going through, we had to keep a clean sheet. But when we got that goal in the moment, I was, definitely ecstatic. And then even right after the goal, we had a decent enough chance when Judicic broke again. I was expecting him to, he was high on confidence. I was expecting him to come in and shoot himself. Instead, he crossed it low. And, I knew this couldn't get on the end of it. Then a couple of minutes later, the usual implosion. Just nothing came out of nowhere, really. Just, I don't know. They failed to deal with it. Yeah, it's frustrating. It's not like it was nice build-up play or anything like that. The goals last week, one of them was really nice build-up play. Today's one was just scrappy. And I know our goal was scrappy as well with the finish, but yeah, it's what you said, so vulnerable moments after we score, and that's the sucker punch, that's the killer blow. When you concede right after you score like that was game over right then and there.
Yeah, and
Ultimately, the damage done in the first leg, but no, definitely, in the moment you have that glimmer of hope, then it gets wiped out.
and whether or not it was planned from Russell Martin to bring on Djeidi Gassama with around half an hour to go, certainly that decision was made a lot easier for him with the Panathinaikos goal going in. And I was crying out for the whole of the first half that Rangers needed an out ball. They needed someone to send Panathinaikos going back the other way because Curtis and Dowell weren't on the ball enough in that first half. There was no one close enough to Danilo Pereira up at the top end of the park, and it was just all too easy for Panathinaikos to come on to Rangers defence. So Gassama needed to be on and to be able to cause a bit of chaos going back the other way, and especially when Panathinaikos are now pressing to get the equaliser and the tie, having someone that was able to go the other way, I thought was really, really beneficial. And he takes advantage of a break of the ball in the end in the box, a really lovely kind of first time finish for him to kind of strike it into the back of the net, and a really tidy finish from Gassama, and that's now 2 goals in 2 games from him off the bench, and already with Rangers' progress into the next round, that's his transfer fee to Sheffield Wednesday paid, essentially with those 2 goals. And he's a player that I think rightfully Rangers fans can be very excited about if he can be in the side on a bit more of a regular basis now, certainly from a start. But he was the difference tonight, that just that little bit of an X factor, someone that could do something that little bit different. And that goal from Gassama really proved to be a little bit of a sucker punch, because whilst Panathinaikos would still have some chances towards the end of the game, none of them were really what you would class as gilt-edged opportunities that either forced Jack Butland into brilliant saves, or even chances that was shots from distance, or it was kind of crosses that didn't quite find a target. There was pressure, but there was nothing that really looked as if it was massively threatening on Jack Butland's goal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you could feel it as well with the fans. The people started to empty out as well. Everyone, it sucked the life out of us, that goal,
And
unfortunately.
yeah, and you could see that a bit of whether it's gamesmanship from Rangers, but that they were starting to kind of take their time with kind of goal kicks and throw-ins, and just try and kind of manage the game out and use, but as you mentioned earlier, some of the kind of professionalism and that kind of European know-how of how to get the result. And in the end, the last kind of 20 minutes were seen out relatively comfortably, despite Panathinaikos throwing on extra strikers and extra players to kind of try and force the game. But aside from a cross that went across at the face of goal that Ioannidis just was kind of inches away from getting his toe on. That was really the closest that Pana would come.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's it. And yeah, generally it doesn't really work for us, Panathinaikos, when we throw on all the strikers at once and we hope for the best, and that's when, yeah, that's when you know it's not your day. I knew this tie just, I didn't have a good feeling about it when you're 2-0 down the second leg. Look, what I'm trying to say is the damage was done in the first leg, and when you're trying to play catch up, we don't do these big comebacks very very rarely.
Yeah, and I think when you look at it, that's now 16 ties out of 17 where Rangers have carried a two-goal lead into the second leg and they've managed to see through the tie. So, again, that kind of know-how I've been able to see through when they've got a lead certainly was, in the end, enough. And you
Absolutely.
mentioned that damage that was done at Ibrox last week. And we speak about sliding doors moments a lot in football, Nick, but that opportunity that Panathinaikos had just a minute before the second yellow card for Vangianidis last week at Ibrox, that at the time seemed very much a
Yeah.
game-changing moment. But was that perhaps a tie-changing pivotal moment that, had it gone the other way, we could have been talking about a very different story over the two games?
I agree. That was definitely the one because the red card comes moments later as well. Then the goals start coming as well. Now, definitely, you could have even said our earlier chances in the first half last week, but I would say that's the one.
Yep. Obviously, Vangianidis now looks like he's going to be moving on from Panathinaikos, a deal to take him to Portugal, all but done now in terms of a kind of big money transfer. Whether or not that was one that would have happened anyway, but probably slightly bittersweet for him to be leaving Panathinaikos off the back of a red card and not being able to contribute in this tie.
Yeah, wish him all the best. Not the first time he's left us. He made his debut when we were going through those European bans and transfer bans back then. We were playing forced to play young kids week in week out. He was he was teenager, he was like 16, 17 back then, and he left us after a couple of games and he went to Inter Milan. Then he came back and now he's sold for 15 million, most expensive sale in our club's history. So it's good to see it's an academy player. We retain a 15% sell-on clause as well. We know what the Portuguese clubs are like, especially Sporting. Very tough to deal with, and they like to sell big. I believe it's a release clause now that they've put in of 80 million euro. So we'll see how he goes over there. Yeah, as I said, wish him all the best. Yeah, you want to see your academy boys do well, and we've got our replacement already. It would have happened regardless whether we did progress or we didn't. They've been after him. They've been tracking him now for some time. They were also linked with Ioannidis like over a year ago as well. They've got Ioannidis. Yeah, as I said, they were linked with him. Would have happened regardless. Announcements most likely coming in the next 24, 48 hours. The replacement is basically done as well. Aurelio Buta from Eintracht Frankfurt, Portuguese youth international, 28 years old now, worked with Vitoria previously at Benfica. So he spent last season on loan in France at Reims.
Yeah, so certainly that'll get done. Next up for Panathinaikos now is what looks like a very tricky qualifier for the Europa League against one of Besiktas or Shakhtar
Oh,
Donetsk.
it's Shakhtar.
Yeah, the Shakhtar obviously carrying a 4-2 lead from the first leg, and that looks tricky on paper. And for Rangers, as you mentioned earlier, Victoria Pilsen coming to Ibrox next midweek for the first leg of that qualifier. The draw will be done on Monday of this week for the playoff round, so both teams will know what the route will be to the riches of the Champions League. Looking like it will be one of four teams, either the winner of Benfica versus Nice or the winner of Salzburg versus Club Brugge will await the winner of Rangers versus Victoria Pilsen. But the fact the Rangers getting through this tie against Panathinaikos has now got them guaranteed minimum Europa League group stage football, which I think for the rebuild that Russell Martin and his side have got to do this year, that guaranteed group stage money coming in will now allow them to go out and seal the deals for the likes of Mikey Moore coming in on loan from Tottenham Hotspur. We expect that deal to be completed in the next 48 hours or so. Still retaining an interest in the Go Ahead Eagles winger Oliver Antman, and also Jessurun Raksaki from Crystal Palace. So certainly looking to do some more business in terms of the forward areas. Lille continue to retain an interest in Hamza Igaman, who we expect to go out, and just wonder what the future might hold for Cyril Dessers, Nick. He had a real opportunity in the closing stages of the match tonight. Wasn't quite able to get past the Panathinaikos goalkeeper. He's had a long-running move to AEK Athens. It's been in the wings. It's gone quiet of late over the course of the last kind of couple of weeks, but my indication is that AEK Athens are still very keen to get that deal done. And whether or not now Rangers, with that guaranteed European money now, might be in a bit more of a position to go ahead and get that deal completed, and then that maybe frees up space for maybe someone like a Dor Turgeman to come in from Maccabi Tel Aviv, who were themselves eliminated from Champions League potential this tonight as well. So I think a lot to happen in terms of forward areas from a Rangers perspective. But do you see Cyril Dessers being in Greece this season?
I would say, yeah, just over 50% chance. I would have weeks ago when we were last on, it looked like it was going to happen. Now, as you said, it's gone quiet. Last 24, 48 hours, again, it's picked up. Again, you hear his name being mentioned by the Greek media.
Yeah.
I do think it'll happen. I need reinforcements as well, especially in attacking areas.
In terms of that tie for Panathinaikos against likely Shakhtar Donetsk, it's a tough tie for Panathinaikos in terms of trying to get themselves at least into Europa League, which will be a platform that they'll think that they will want to be competitive at. But Donetsk, they've got pedigree as well, and that's going to be a tough opportunity for Panathinaikos to try and bounce back from what will ultimately be a very disappointing result, because I think if you look at over the course of the two legs against Rangers, they'll feel as if they had plenty of opportunity to get through this tie, and they haven't been able to do that.
Nightmare tie. This was the opponent I feared the most. I really did not want Shakhtar. I know they're probably not the team of what they were once were 10, 15 years ago. It's still going to be very hard. Honestly, they probably haven't got the European pedigree of a Rangers, but in my opinion, they're going to be a lot harder to beat than Rangers. And if we couldn't get past Rangers, it's going to be very, very, very hard. Yeah. They tore Besiktas apart last week. They scored 4. They could have scored 5, 6, if not more. Really good going forward. All we can do is focus on ourselves, and we have to rectify the finishing. We have to play on the front foot. I believe we're back at home first leg next week, so I don't think we're going to quite get the big crowd that we got tonight. We'll see how that goes. We've got to get Europa League as a minimum. Champions League would have been great. Obviously, you want to aim for the stars. We haven't played in it now for the best part of 15 years, but Europa League's the bare minimum, especially from a financial point of view. We're one of many clubs that got fined by UEFA with breaching these new cost control rules. It was only a small fine, but still, it's €400,000 for you can't keep getting away with it every season. So the extra prize money helps. And reports are if we do drop down to the Conference League, we're looking at more sales of key big name players. So it's crucial we find a way to get past Shakhtar at all costs. And I wanted us Champions League, if we made it realistically, we were never going to be competitive. It's a weak Conference League this season. I see us being competitive if we get there in the Europa League. That's where I wanted us to be. And now we have to get there. No ifs, no buts. Just find a way to beat Shakhtar, even if it's going to be harder. Just do it.
Yeah. From a Rangers perspective, all eyes now go to Motherwell on Saturday for the start of the league campaign. A few weeks to go before the Greek league season kicks off, Nick. Yeah.
Your league's back this weekend.
Yep.
Wow.
First league game of the season's on
Whoa.
Saturday evening. Yeah, but I know you've still got a few weeks before the Greek
Oh, we
season
got
kicks
like
off.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. I didn't realize yours was coming so early. Wow. Yeah, ours always starts towards the back end of August. So
So
we're
yeah,
still on one game a week for now.
yeah. So does that kind of help, or does it maybe hinder the fact that you've now got a week to prepare for that Donetsk game?
I would imagine help. We've got a longer turnaround than Shakhtar. I would imagine it helps. You don't
Perfect.
want the 2 games a week from early doors in we're still in July technically.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, loads of coverage as we build up to the Motherwell game at the weekend here on the Fourth Official. If you want to hear more about Greek football, I would urge you to check out Nick and the rest of the guys over at the Hellas Footy podcast. We've now done a few collaborations with yourselves, and once again, we've got Greek football and Scottish football being very closely aligned over the course of the coming months. When international football, we will lock horns again in the qualifiers for the World Cup, and again we'll have Nick or Stephen from the Hellas Footy podcast here on the Fourth Official for those games as well. But yeah, if you've got any sort of interest in Greek football and you want to stay close to Panathinaikos and certainly what happens in that game against Shakhtar, then yeah, please check out Hellas Footy. You can get them on X and on YouTube. If people want to see more from yourself, Nick, where can they find you?
My ex handle is just at Nick Red V. As you said, so part of the Hellas Football podcast, also part of another podcast as well, Ball Fans International. That's solely focused on all things Panathinaikos, where we go more in depth. Obviously, with Hellas Football, we cover Greek football at wide ranging, all levels, basically from the national team right down to the lower leagues. Whereas the Ball Fans International podcast is all things Panathinaikos, including our basketball team as well.
Yep. So yeah,
I'm
if
not sure
you
if you guys are aware in Greek sports, it's Panathinaikos, Olympiakos, for instance, or they're the big two in basketball. We all have like the amateur associations as well with volleyball, water polo, etc., etc. But basketball is also huge in Greece. So
well,
we're 7-time European champions. We won it last year, the most recent time, and they're actually coming out to Australia in a couple of months' time. Basketball team.
that
So
makes
it'd be
them
good to see.
slightly closer to home then than what you are at the moment. But no, we really appreciate you coming on. Obviously, a very early start for you this morning, and sadly, not the result that you would have been looking for, but certainly from us and a Rangers perspective, wasn't pretty by any stretch of the imagination, but the result was the key thing. And yeah, they move on for Pilsen next week. A big thank you to
Results first and foremost. Definitely, especially this time of year, and good luck for the rest of your season. As I said, I'll be keeping an eye on moving
no,
forward.
no, we appreciate that. Thank you to you all for listening to us here. Don't forget to check us out over on our YouTube channel as well. Over 150 videos now over there on our platform. And if you've not yet joined the 2,500 subscribers we've got on the channel, we would love to see you on there. You can find us at The Fourth Official on YouTube. But until the next time we speak to you, thanks for listening. Goodbye.